Well, good morning, everybody. Before we walk through the forecast changes over the next couple of weeks and then take a look at some of the implications of what this spring and early summer weather has done to sections of the country, I want to just spend a moment kind of wrapping up a story we've had all week, which was with respect to the large hail event that has hit parts of Nebraska. Now, this is not to ignore the hail that has hit other parts of the U.S. It's just to look at one particular event. So I'm going to show you some satellite data. You're right here along Interstate 80. That is the road that is running through here. And the slider that I'm about to use is going to show you one of our more recent same-day kind of cloud-free time period. So I went back to 2021 to find it. And what I wanted to do is just look at this area and kind of see how much things have changed compared to this year. So if I go back and forth, I want you to really watch right in through here. So this is the map from 2021. All right, so we're looking right in through here. And here's the one from 2024. And it would appear to me that all of what you see in through this area here and a couple of areas to the north that we're seeing damage from hail. And you can also see it here as well. And to get a good estimate on total acreage that's been impacted here, I'm still working on this a little bit, but this is significant. So again, this is this year, so we're really seeing these discolored areas as indications as to where the hail hit some very, very important farm ground here along I-80. And just wanted to kind of wrap up that discussion just to show you what we saw here on satellite. Here's the big picture. In the near term, we are going to slow this whole pattern down a little bit. We are going to be getting into some drier air for places that do need it. But before we kind of do that, we need to talk about kind of the precipitation that came through with Beryl. So through 6 a.m. this morning, this is the latest update we've got from the MRMS data set looking at total accumulated precipitation. And again, this is using my old color bar. We'll have new updated maps coming all to you very soon here. Yeah, I know I've been promising that for about a month now, but we're almost finished with it. It just takes a long time to make sure everything's working properly. Just take a look. Some of these rainfall totals are quite high. Yeah, we've got several places in here picking between 4 and 10 inches of rain. And Beryl hit some really important ground in terms of farmland, especially right in through this corridor that really needed the precipitation. Take note, though, of how narrow the heaviest rain bands were. There are still big sections of parts of the Ohio River Valley that needed to get more rain out of Beryl that did not. In addition to this, we did see on that right-hand side, that northwest quadrant of the storm, the upper right quadrant is the way I should describe it. The upper right quadrant of the storm did produce numerous reports of tornadoes. And just looking yesterday as this sun was setting, here was some of the deeper convection on Beryl's kind of eastern side here, just resulting in some very powerful storms, some of which produced tornadoes. Outside of that, the ongoing discussion about the wildfire smoke coming out of Canada, the stuff that was in the west, continues to be a major concern. We did have some pretty deep convection coming through parts of New Mexico, getting into southern Arizona as well. Some of these storms, one of these storms did produce a tornado here yesterday as well. But I think as you see the sun setting last night, it's just important to note how much wildfire smoke is in the atmosphere throughout the western half of the United States. So I just wanted to leave you with that image. In terms of storm reports, let's go back to yesterday. Here we go. Just taking a look at it again, 3 reports of tornadoes. Not worldwide spread on the severe weather reports, so a lot of the story is going to come down to total precipitation. So this was through midnight, so it does not capture the rain that's fallen since midnight that's moved into this area, but this is a 7-day look on total precipitation. And while we saw some deep convection in the southeast, the desperately needed storms getting into central Oklahoma, Beryl's kind of the main story as to where the heaviest precipitation has fallen. And that's really kind of impacted our soil moisture. Just looking right now at the latest 10 centimeter or 4-inch soil moisture data, this just shows you the impacts that Beryl had on some critical ground throughout parts of the southern plains into this area, the Mid-South and the Corn Belt. So we've been wetter here and wetter there, and it's just really important to look at these regions that are on either side that have been drier. And I'm thinking a lot about parts of Kansas, also getting over here into centered on West Virginia, but hitting parts of the Ohio Valley toward the Mid-Atlantic, Virginia, North Carolina. The West, which has taken on so much heat as of late, has had relatively high evaporation rates. We'll look at those again in a few moments. We are expecting those to approach 2 to 3 inches again this week with the heat that's still in the western United States. So the soil moisture here, of course, has been zapped on the whole, but a lot of agriculture in this part of the world is controlled with irrigation. But if we take a little bit deeper dive down, this is now down to 100 centimeters or 40 inches. It really kind of reveals the depth of the dryness that is in parts of the Ohio Valley getting over into the mid-Atlantic here, and also what we're still dealing with in the central plains of the United States. So I'll be looking forward to the drought monitor, which will be coming out tomorrow, just to kind of see any new insights that can provide on how this drought has been evolving in these key dry areas. From there, I do want to bring you up to speed on some of the river information, because now we've seen a lot of these gauges going toward action, minor, and moderate flood stage in through here as we just follow the track of Beryl. But I did take a quick look at the Mississippi, which is, of course, gathering this, and this morning up to 15 feet above low stage. So it's kind of made a nice little turn here as some of this water starts to percolate down. But again, there's ongoing major flood problems happening on the Mississippi River just due to the heavy rains we've seen as of late, but not at Memphis, but much further up here between the border of Iowa and Illinois. And just kind of having a look at some of these, I don't know, let's go to Burlington, Iowa, just to let you know, if you go to water.noaa.gov, you can zoom in and take a look at the individual gauge data. And we are currently at major flood stage here in Burlington. Record, which was probably set in 1993. I'll have to go back and check that, but that would make most sense to me. It's still another, 5 feet above where it is right now, but it's just, an important resource that you can make sure and take advantage of. All right, where are we going? Well, we've kind of been hinting at this idea of a northward retreat of the jet stream and a calmer time period in the tropics for at least 7 to 10 days. And the Bermuda High kind of becoming a bit stronger, taking a weak little tropical system here into the Carolinas and parts of Virginia and into the Mid-Atlantic, which is needed. But overall, the pattern not really conducive to any sort of major features that are driving across the country. So we need to look at where we've been and then assess what this pattern really truly looks like. So let's go ahead and do that. But I just want to give you a snapshot of your next 2 weeks. You're getting all the way out to July 24th. So I want to come back to this map. And this would be the 8th of June through the 9th of July, just looking at precipitation ranks by climate district. And just to illustrate the strength of the early southwest monsoon, the extremely heavy rains that have been in the Midwest, upper Midwest, the dryness in the Ohio Valley over toward the Mid-Atlantic and the East Coast here. And then, of course, the exceptional dryness that's been in Northern California, which has also taken on quite a bit of the heat. But I was really focusing a lot, just kind of in my backyard here, at the impacts in this area, just as one area to evaluate today. And if we take a look, the cumulative downward solar flux, so this is basically how much sunlight's getting to the ground. Those drier regions, we've had an abundant amount of sunshine in these areas, which has increased evaporation rates as well. But here, where we've had a lot of our rain and the southwest monsoonal influence, we're sitting at a deficit for sunlight. And what's been key about this is the late planting in that area, combined with replanting and some of our photosensitive crops, which in this area is primarily going to be soybeans, just not getting the sunshine, nor have they really been getting much of the heat up to this point that they've needed. Over that same time period, we've been averaging the upper Midwest, northern plains, Canadian prairie temperatures, 3 to 5 degrees over a 30-day time period, cooler than average. And so just questions are getting asked about what this could possibly mean as we go forward, and how are we assessing what the crop health looks like in this area. It's had a lot of rain, but it's other factors we have to think about, stuff like just stand quality, stalk rot, disease pressures, which we talked about on Monday, and things like that. So from there, I want to take a look at some NDVI data. We've been doing this a lot, of course, for Russia and Ukraine, which I'll finish with today. But I just chose these states which were primarily the wettest of the states. I should have included Nebraska, but Nebraska west to east has had much different precipitation patterns than the majority of this area. Maybe I could say the same for South Dakota as well. But just looking at these 4 Midwestern states, where's the NDVI value? It's just a hair below the 2001 to 2021 average. A year ago, much higher. And I went looking for a year that was comparable in NDVI, and the closest I could find was 2019. That was about the same spot where we were at this point in the year. That's just NDVI numbers here. So, no, the crop from space does not have when looking at NDVI, have the above average look to it in these areas. And if you ever want to go do this yourself, just go over here to GLAM1 weather.gsfc.nasa.gov and play around with the data set, look at your region. You can zoom in at several different levels and get some great data. This all comes from NASA, and it's, I believe most of the data is from the MODIS on the Terra platform, which is a great, great instrument. So let's come back to where we are and where we're going. We do have flood watches that continue to stretch in through here. Most of this is going to be rain from Beryl. Heat advisories, heat watches, heat warnings. East Coast and West Coast continue. Also quite hot down south as well. But one of the things that we're going to watch carefully over the next couple of days is going to be this weak little wave that's sitting off of the coast, kind of pushed there by the big Bermuda high, which is sitting here right now. And it's going to get pulled onshore, and some of the moisture is going to get pulled with it. So it's kind of getting yanked north by the low that is still Beryl, which is spinning around in through here today. And we're going to see how that all kind of progresses and moves north and drags moisture with it. But if I just step you up to the jet stream level, I think this is pretty important to see. This larger ridge that's been in the west is opening. See it kind of opening into the midsection of the country. The main flow is way north, and I think that's going to be a major reason why we see drier conditions with only limited chances of some storms coming up, and also heat that's going to move in as we work our way toward the end of this week and early next week. There is a cool down coming for the Canadian Prairie, Great Lakes. We'll look at the timing of that very soon. But I think the first thing I want to show you is that early this morning, the National Hurricane Center did change this area now to a 10% risk of having, broad kind of tropical low pressure development in this area. And we'll just kind of keep an eye on what that means in terms of precip. So first handle we're going to give to here is going to be the NAM, high-res NAM. So starting off about 9 o'clock this morning, playing forward, Beryl's moisture continues to spread throughout Ontario, Quebec, into parts of the Northeast. We'll watch this evening for the risk of strong to severe storms again. So remember, we've had tornado threat here. We've seen it come through parts of the Ohio Valley, and now we're going to watch here, all of that being in that upper right quadrant of the storm system, just supporting better wind shear profile for rotating storms. So we'll watch out for that tonight. Isolated convection on the back side of this. And then as I play this into tomorrow, that's what we're going to keep an eye on. So through Thursday afternoon and evening, getting into Friday, we'll just watch for some of the moisture from this weak tropical low that's sitting off here moving into parts of the East Coast. So that'll be just a key factor to pay attention to. Storm Prediction Center did go with an enhanced risk in this area. And I will be updating all these maps soon. They have a bit of a bug right now. There's actually no thunderstorm risk in this area today, but it's filled in with gray. I'll figure that out. I know it's been like that forever, but I have new mapping libraries coming out, so we'll get all that fixed for you. And then going in tomorrow, just a few different areas to watch for some isolated storms. So let's walk through our 5 models. This is the next 7 days according to the artificial intelligence forecasting system. Now remember, these are 0Z runs, so we're kind of getting a glimpse at what we have remaining out of this system plus what's coming here. We are expecting throughout Mexico, getting into along the Gulf Coast, more storm activity, but it's going to be relatively limited throughout the midsection of the country. This is the NBM look at the same thing. We'll talk more about the potential for storms in this area, but a larger area of drier weather outside of Gulf Coast storms, the tropical system here, and what's going on with our southwest monsoon. Here's the WPC, and kind of a very similar look. And here's let's go back and find the European model. There it is. That's the European. Now, I had to rerun again. Good. The new GFS is finally done. I apologize. Yesterday I said Nomads was having some trouble. It was, but it didn't affect the GFS. Somehow the top several lines of my cron tab where I run all of this on our server were cut off. And so it was not running the GFS. So I'm going to get that fixed as soon as we're done here. But spent a little time trying to investigate that this morning. So again, we're looking at the 7-day outlook from the GFS and comparing it to the European. We got pretty good agreement in the models here overall in the position of things. So speaking of the position, let's now watch the jet stream pattern. I think this is going to really tell us what's going on here. So these are troughs and ridges. We get into Friday and Saturday, and again, the main story at that point was how far to the north the jet stream lives. A couple of larger high-pressure cells, actually 3 of them, 4 if you include this one, pushing the jet stream to the north, and that's going to be kind of the introduction of a hot weekend. But anytime we have ridges like this, can we get some storms to fire over the northern edge of it? Probably with this pattern. But as we get out there toward the 15th, 16th, and 17th, the models, again, we talked about this yesterday, are going back into a bit more amplification, trying to bring in a trough of cooler, drier air starting on the 16th through the 17th and 18th, and that will swipe through, dropping temperatures down while they quickly rebound on the backside behind it. But this pattern has been so productive at producing these features for the last 6 to 8 weeks rolling through the country, and we certainly see that again on the 19th of July. So as we just play this out here, I see a lot of things on repeat. Waves of heat opening in the midsection of the country after living in the west, but a trough kind of breaks things down in the northwest. It'll eventually make it into the Great Lakes states, but it's going to be about meandering ridges as the jet stream is kind of on this full summer retreat up toward the north. So what I'll be watching for are anytime you build in a ridge into the west, like this one like this, is we look for these small little disturbances, these little wiggles in the flow of the atmosphere, little bundles of vorticity. I don't know if that's a proper meteorology term, but what I'm looking for is to watch these kind of cascade over the northern edge of the ridge. Some of them are induced by speed shear. Some of them are induced by leftover convection, weaker troughs kind of sneaking through the flow. But the reality of it is that we see them, right? You see these little weaker trough features, which means even though the models are showing drier, these have the potential for kicking off storms. So that's one of the things I'm looking out for as we go through the next 7 or 8 days. What is pretty clear, though, is that by next Tuesday, Wednesday, ridge is going to come in here, but there's going to be a nice cool down of drier air coming into this area behind this low that's going to move into parts of Quebec as well. So to kind of see all of it, let's go ahead and look at today's ECMWF again, because I have not been running the 0Z GFS properly. We don't have the comparison map, so I'll get it fixed. It'll all be up and running soon. So here we go. This is through Wednesday, getting into Thursday afternoon and evening, working our way into Friday. And if you just watch, this is now Saturday. See, by Saturday afternoon and evening, do you see just storms trying to show up in the model? They're along the Gulf Coast. They're with this system that's around the edge of the Bermuda High here, but riding through this corridor, just running over this ridge, these little weak waves trying to initiate storm complexes. See them? We know that by the 15th, 16th, and 17th, a deeper low shows up. And behind that, we're going to wipe all this out with this high pressure cell right in through there. So by the time we get to next Wednesday, our low is here, our front drops in. We're going to get much drier air on the back side of this, come cooler air. Storms in the southeast, storms running up into the western and high plains will be kind of linked up with that frontal boundary. I just think that's how things are going to play out about a week from now. And just continuing this model out, there's going to be some drier, cooler air that tries to sneak in here for a few days, middle and end of next week. So let's look at that week 2 pattern. We still see that there's a drier look across the northern tier of the U.S. and Canadian prairie in the models for week 2. But it's just to stress here that there will be isolated storms that continue to form, most likely throughout this corridor during that time frame. We're wetter to the south primarily due to the influence of the flow coming out of the tropics. We do have some strong flow coming through the Caribbean. We have the edge of the Bermuda High sitting here, and there's not going to be any trouble, I think, getting good moisture just to pop storms down into this area. I'm not seeing at this point any major risk of a new tropical system that's developing, but it just kind of comes back to this idea of, how is the flow going to set up? Let's actually get back to about day 10. Might be a little bit better look at this. What are we doing in this area on this side of the ridge, which is here, just to make better chances for storms? I think that's what the main story is going to be in that area. So let's go from there onto a temperature discussion. I showed you the last 30 days at the beginning, but even the last 2 weeks as we've watched excessive heat just live across the south, and then, near record-setting temperatures here across the southwest, getting into California, and now in the last several days up into the northwest. These extremely hot temperatures have just been surrounding much cooler air in the upper Midwest, northern plains, and Canadian prairie. In the last 7 days, that's really been amplified. So the change in temperature that's going to be happening here is going to be quite the contrast. You're about to see some major heat coming into this area after being so cool for so long. I did want to let you know, though, that since the beginning of July, so July compared to every start of every July we've had since 1893, I just want you to see how hot it is. This is either the new hottest or second hottest start to July on record for a big section here of California, Oregon, and back into parts of Arizona. Well, we've been significantly cooler than we can be in early July here. But as I said, this is all changing pretty quickly, and you're going to watch the high temperatures that are still exceptionally hot in the west today. Watch it open up into the plains by Thursday into Friday. 101 degrees in central Kansas, deep in the 90s in parts of Nebraska. We got the last bit of cooler air kind of trying to leave the Midwest here, because by Saturday, that's a lot of temperatures over 100 degrees across much of the western half of the United States. And we're going way back up in the upper 80s, low 90s throughout the Corn Belt here, with the southeast running along the Appalachian Mountains, well into deep into the 90s. Same thing for Sunday. In fact, Sunday's even a bit hotter. And into Monday, 101 degrees in Kansas City. We're expecting quite a bit of heat with this. But as I mentioned, after the 15th, when that low curls up right here, there's going to be a cold front that slides through. But until we get there, evaporation rates with all that heat that's coming in, parts of Kansas, Colorado, getting into Oklahoma and Texas, we're at 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 inches of evaporation that we're expecting in this area because of the heat that's going to come through. But once that cool air dives in, look at the day 5 through 10. We get a break in this area while a lot of heat moves into the western plains and northern plains, getting into sections of the Canadian Prairie, but it's going to be on the western side, not necessarily in through this area. Day 10 through 15 looks pretty similar to that. And the European model echoes it. In fact, it's even got a little bit cooler of a pattern here. This is day 5 through 10, and that's day 10 through 15. So we see a cool down that's going to occur, lasting a few days here behind that low, and the high pressure that results from it. So that'll be some mid-July cooler weather that's going to be coming through this section of the country. All right, that's been a bit of a model trend. We're going to have to watch carefully to see if it maintains itself going forward. All right, last couple things I want to cover as we're rebuilding our longer range ideas. I'm still stuck on this. The models refuse to go wetter than average across Ukraine. Now it's into Belarus. You can see much of western Russia showing up drier. Same story really across parts of India and Southeast Asia. Drier south of the Yangtze, now very wet north. And while the Sahel is kicking off storms, there's a lot of Saharan dust to the north and upper level subsidence in this area, which is why we're not seeing any major tropical cyclones in the next 10 days forming here. And we still have that front that's parked down here in southern Brazil. And that's what's delivering all this very heavy rain into Mato Grosso do Sul, down toward Parna, hitting a little bit of Sao Paulo and Santa Catarina as well. But if you look at those temperatures, really stark contrast in that area over the next 10 days. Still hot here. So I just want to bring you back one more time to look at this. Since we did NDVI values in the upper Midwest, let's go ahead and have a look at it here. And look again, and you see that the values are still, for these areas shaded and through here, still near the very lowest in the distribution, looking back over the last 20 plus years. So I just think we need to think hard about what this could do to the crops that are grown here. And a lot of folks are thinking about wheat, but remember, they do grow other summer crops in that area. And we just need to assess how low these NDVI values are and what it might mean. So with that, I'll stop, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.